Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the What's New with Electric Vehicles webinar. My name is Beth, and I'll be your host this morning. We would like to start with a safety moment. Safety is a core value at PGE, and we want to remind you to be safe around electricity. As you consider installing or retrofitting new equipment, please keep safety in mind. We would also like to encourage your family and staff to be prepared with an outage kit. You can visit our website for more safety information. We would also like to thank the Energy Trust of Oregon and the Northwest Energy Efficiency Alliance for their support in co-sponsoring this series of free energy efficiency trainings that are open to all Northwest utilities and their customers. Before I introduce the presenter, I'd like to show you some tools you'll be using during the webinar. To the right of your screen, you'll see several windows: the participants window, the chat window, and a polling window will appear at the end of the session. If you have any questions during the webinar, you may submit them to me through chat, and I will ask the presenters this at the end of the webinar. At the top left corner of your screen, beneath the Quick Start tab, you will see some annotating tools, which you should see here on your screen, and I will circle them. A marker, a text tool, and a highlighting tool. And the presenter will ask you to use these during specific slides during the presentation. And now I'd like to introduce this morning's presenters. Rick Durst is a Transportation Electrification Project Manager at PGE. Rick has over 24 years in the electric utility industry, plus 10 years as an electrician in the U.S. Navy Nuclear Submarine Service. He has been driving EVs since 1995 and driven more than 120,000 electric miles. Rick has coordinated the installation of more than 60 charge stations, including 11 quick charge stations. Stan Sitzer is also a Transportation Electrification Project Manager at PGE. Stan has helped PGE customers understand and benefit from innovative technologies like smart meters and web-based information. Currently, Stan is part of the PGE team that facilitates electric transportation options for customers. Oregonians are choosing electricity as their transportation fuel to save money, shrink their environmental footprint, and reduce our nation's dependence on foreign oil. So without further ado, I would like to hand the presentation over to Stan.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I want to start off our presentation by showing you my own electric vehicle. This is the Tesla Model S sedan. It can go from 0 to 60 in 4.6 seconds. It can go 280 miles on a single charge. It's an amazing car that shows what's possible with electric transportation because it was built without limitations. Unfortunately, it's not my own electric vehicle. This is my electric car. It's a 2011 Think City. And yes, it can go from 0 to 60 miles per hour eventually. And it goes about 75 miles on a charge. And it's a terrific little car. It reminds me of my dad's '56 Volkswagen Beetle. Yes, I fit in it, and yes, it's fun to drive. That just goes to show that there's a wide range of options out there for people considering electric transportation, both the cars and the charging infrastructure. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Today, we're going to give a little history and perspective on electrification of transportation, and I'm going to encourage you to tell you you can do it too. Others have come before you, and you can do it. We'll talk about the vehicles a little bit, and then Rick Durst will talk about the charging stations. We'll talk about the manufacturers and networks and the options that are available on EV charging, and then Rick will take you through step by step, if you've made the decision to install EV charging, how to go about it. It's simpler than you might think. Then finally, I'll get back at the end and talk about tax credits and promotions to make your installation more affordable. So to make electric transportation work, it's really about three things. It's about you, it's about the vehicles, and it's about the charging infrastructure. So let's take a moment first to talk about you. I'd like you to take your highlighter or pencil from the interactive tools in the top left corner and circle the area that you're involved in. So I just circled fleet management. So let me know if you're operating a multifamily project, if you're a retail manager, if you're looking at employee or workplace charging. Thank you, good job. Or if you're just a single family homeowner and interested in the application there. Good. Okay, so we got 3, 4, retail, 5. And okay, so it looks like workplace charging and retail are dominant here. So thank you very much for that feedback. That'll help tailor what we talk about today. Looks like a good turnout. So if you think about the uses of established products like electricity, there are some traditional uses that we're very familiar with. Electricity is used for lighting to brighten the night. It's used to help accomplish work in a variety of settings. And it's used for heating and cooling. I just love this guy. He's the portrait of comfort. There he is with his 2 portable electric heaters. But every once in a while, a new use comes along for an established product. Like if you think about baking soda, you might use it to make some cookies, or you might use it as a cleaning product or things like that. There's lots of different uses. But recently, people have begun putting it in the refrigerator to eliminate odors. And that's a relatively new use. It wasn't thought up by the people at Arm & Hammer. It was from their own customers. And as they realized people were using it for this, they promoted it. You think about BayerAspirin, and it's a pain reliever, right? You use it to eliminate a headache or control muscle aches or maybe fever. But more recently, it's become the wonder drug that works wonders. And it is used to reduce the risk of heart attack and stroke. And that was an application that wasn't thought up by the Bayer folks. It was by doctors and research, and then Bayer just promoted that. I think we're seeing a similar thing happen with electricity applied to transportation. It's a new high-value application for the product we make at Portland General Electric. And we're excited about that, and we want to encourage customers to discover the benefits that other customers have told us about, where they're finding using electricity to move people and goods is better for the environment. It supports their sustainability goals because there's less pollution. They are excited that it may reduce the imports of foreign oil, and it makes us energy independent. It's hard to think of an energy source that is more domestic or locally produced than electricity. And then it also can lower your operational costs. Some of the equipment costs a little bit to buy, or a little bit of a premium for the vehicles, but if you drive it a lot and operate it a lot, it can save money. Let's drill down a little bit deeper on that cost savings. This is a chart that we made to hand out at the auto show and public events. And it's a quick look at how you can save a substantial amount of money per every mile you drive. If you look at a gasoline-powered car, and if we spotted the gas car 30 miles to the gallon, which is a little bit generous, I think the average out there is more like 22 or 24. And if you're driving 12,000 miles a year, and if gas is $3.50 a gallon, which is about what it is now, you're looking at a little bit under 12 cents a mile for every mile you'll drive just for the fuel. With the electric vehicle, getting 4 miles per kilowatt hour, and the vehicle I'm driving right now is getting over 4. And if you have a electricity cost of 10 cents a kilowatt hour, which is like PGE's, driving 12,000 miles, you're at 2.5 cents per mile. So that is about a 75–80% reduction in the fuel cost. If you charge up overnight and use a time of use rate, you can even save more than that. So there's substantial cost savings available in the operation of the electric vehicles. If you look at the changing price of your fuel source, this compares the price of crude oil this compares the price of gasoline compared to the price of electricity over time. And you can see some of the worldwide events that are really beyond our control that can cause the price of oil to rocket up or down in an unpredictable manner. And electricity is far more stable as a locally produced and regulated business. And so that stability helps businesses with their planning so that they can anticipate their fuel costs. And it's just a more affordable option with if you look at the total cost of ownership for the vehicle and the fuel. I think about if you're going to buy a dog, you better think about how much food the dog's going to eat, because whatever you pay for the dog, you're going to pay a lot more for the dog food over the life of the animal. So if you get a little dog or a big dog, it makes a big difference in your budget. Same thing with the total cost of ownership on a vehicle. It's not just how much the vehicle costs, but how much it costs you over the life of the vehicle, specifically maintenance and fuel. And with the electric vehicles, there's far less maintenance and a much lower fuel cost. So some folks are telling us they want to get off this roller coaster with the price of oil and get on something more stable with the price of electricity. There are a lot of opportunities for electrification. We're here today talking about electric cars, vans, and delivery trucks. I'll circle that. If you have some other area that you're interested in or that you're involved in, go ahead and circle that now. If we have anybody out there operating electric forklifts or considering going electric, or if you have something to do with trucking, heavy-duty trucking or truck stop electrification, maybe you're involved with port activities and shore power or yard tugs or something like that, go ahead and circle that. I'm assuming most people are interested in electric cars and vans and trucks. Okay. Oh, we got a forklift guy. Okay. Thank you very much for that. Good. Okay, so here's the cheerleading message. You can do it. You are not alone. You're not going to be the first one that's going to have to figure all this out. If you're interested in driving electric and installing charging infrastructure, there are already 727 public charging stations in Oregon. There's hundreds more in private locations, garages, and behind the gate for employee charging or fleet charging. Others have gone before you, and there's thousands of EVs in Oregon. So this can be done, and you can do it too. This is a photo of the first Chevrolet Volt that we saw in Oregon. This was taken in the fall of 2010 at the charging station out in front of our PGE headquarters in downtown Portland. Notice the California plates, and we're like, wow, it's a Volt. And we ran out and took a picture. And since then, there's been a real proliferation, a real increase in the number of vehicles that are in the U.S. We've seen sales triple in 2012 compared to what they were in 2011, and they've already more than doubled this year what they were last year. And so this chart shows individual tracking of the sales of these different models of cars. All of these cars plug in, and so if we look at the top of this line here, that's the cumulative sales of all plug-in cars. And then if we look at this, I'll switch colors here. If we look at this thick black line, that's the cumulative sales of the first hybrid cars, the Toyota Prius and the Honda Insight, both starting off from when they were introduced and going over time. And so you can see the plug-in car sales are exceeding the original hybrid sales for the same elapsed time period. So that's very exciting to see. There's a lot of adoption of electric vehicles and uptake of the technology. And the chargers have popped up all around the country. You can see there's a blanket of electric vehicle charging across the U.S. And then in some places, like in the Portland, Salem area, there's a tremendous number of electric vehicle charging stations. And so it's really pretty hard to imagine going somewhere where you're going to get stuck. They're out there, they're available, they're accessible, and you can plug in at home, you can plug in at work, you can plug in out in public. Could you please take your interactive tool and make a dot or a circle where you are? Here's me, out in Boring. Where are you from? Where are you? Where's your workplace? You could make a W for work, or you can make an H for home. That's good. Okay. Southwest, South Oregon City, Sherwood. Somebody from looks like Clark County. Great. Okay. So it looks like we've got good coverage for everybody that's made their mark. Somebody out in Sandy. Okay. Thank you very much. If you're considering the installation of electric vehicle charging, this is not rocket science. An electric vehicle charger is an electrical appliance. It's like a clothes dryer. If you have a Nissan Leaf that charges at 3.3 kilowatts, that's about the same amount of energy that's used by an electric clothes dryer or a couple of hair dryers. So the grid can handle it. A question we've received a lot is, am I going to take down the grid in my neighborhood if I put one of these in? And no. We've done this before. We did it with refrigeration in the 1920s. We did it with clothes dryers in the 40s and 50s. I still remember when my grandma got her clothes dryer installed, and it was an exciting day, but it was a relatively simple project. They installed a new circuit from the panel down to where the dryer was going to be, put a little hole in the wall where the exhaust was going to go, and poof, grandma got a dryer. Air conditioning in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Hot tubs, we've done this before, and now we can do it with electric vehicle charging. The grid can handle it. If you look around, you'll see all kinds of electric vehicles in the area. You'll see the tram at OHSU on the top left, the streetcar in the middle, and lots of electric cars. Lots and lots of electric cars. There's over 3,500 electric cars in Oregon right now. So I'd mentioned before, it's about you, and it's about the vehicles, and it's about the charging infrastructure. Right now, let's talk about the vehicles a little bit. What have you seen out there, or what have you driven? Take your interactive tool, and please mark if you've seen an electric vehicle out and about, or if you own one. I'm going to mark here, I own one and I'm a regular driver. Maybe you have one at work. Friend has one, okay. Anybody taking a test drive? You don't have one, don't own one, but you've gotten a chance to get behind the wheel. Okay. So I encourage you, if you've heard about, seen about, but you haven't taken a test drive, go ahead and go to a local dealer and get behind the wheel, because you will be in for a different kind of experience. A lot of customers have told us that it's a superior driving experience, a sports car performance with an economy car operational cost. I live on a hill, and it's fun to drive up my hill because I'm not searching for the right gear. I don't have to spool up the reciprocating internal combustion engine to the right RPM. It's just, and 100% torque at any RPM. Zoom, I'm up the hill. So let's talk a little bit about the different kinds of technologies that are in plug-in vehicles. And there's a variety of combinations. And it's pretty simple, but they're different, so let's talk about that. First of all, there's what's known as a hybrid car. And a lot of people think of these as an electric car, but they're not really a car that uses grid electricity. They use gasoline, and then there's an onboard engine that generates electricity, and then it goes into a battery, which then drives an electric motor. So that's a hybrid car. Maybe the Toyota Prius comes to mind. But that's not really what we mean when we talk about an electric vehicle. Next, there's a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. And what they've done there is they basically said, let's let people drive a little ways on all electric power before the engine kicks in, and then it operates like a traditional hybrid. So you've got a little bit bigger battery. Maybe you can go 9 or 10 miles. Maybe with the Volt, you can go up to about 35 or 40 miles, and then the gas engine will kick in as needed. Probably the most notable ones are the Volt, and then now there is a Prius plug-in. And then there's the all-electric, battery electric vehicles. And these don't have a gasoline engine. They don't have a filler tube. They don't have an exhaust pipe or any exhaust emissions. And here you might think of cars like the Nissan Leaf or that Tesla I showed you earlier, Honda Fit. There's a variety of cars. And there are different kinds of hybrid technologies, but we can simplify it to say there's hybrids, plug-in hybrids, and battery electrics. And you really want to think about what fits your lifestyle or what fits your business application. Do you need to go, and keep going and you don't have time to recharge during the middle of the day, or do you charge overnight? And we had a fleet manager that recently said, I'm going to replace all of our cars, except a couple, with the electric, the Nissan Leaf, as we need to vintage them out, because we don't have any cars that go more than 50 or 60 miles a day, and they all have overnight to charge back up. So that is a great fit for that business. Then we have other businesses that say, no, sometimes my people have to keep going, or in the middle of the day they'll find that they need to make a run down to Silverton or something like that. And so they said they want that gasoline backup as peace of mind and reassurance. So let's talk about some of the different cars and what might be the right fit. The top two here are, you might say, more of a sports car type application, a little more expensive. Some people might call it an exotic. And they are the Tesla Model S and the BMW i3. The Tesla is all electric. I'm not going to go through all this detail. You'll get a copy of these slides as a follow-up, so you don't have to take notes, and you don't have to read through all this right now. I'll just hit some high points. So Tesla's all electric. It really sets the bar as far as range. The BMW i3 is all electric, but it does have an option that's going to be available for a very small two-cylinder range extending motor. It's not for everyday use. It's more like the emergency use to get you home, but they are going to have that gas backup as an option. Then as far as maybe a little more practical day-to-day vehicles that you see out there, there's one with the gas backup, and that's the Chevrolet Volt. And then there's the Nissan Leaf, and that's all electric. So whether you're at the high end or the more moderate price vehicles, you'll find those gas backup and all electric options available. Other vehicles, there's about a dozen you could buy today in Oregon. The Toyota Prius now has a plug-in version of its hybrid. Ford has an all-electric vehicle, the Ford Focus. And that's kind of hard to distinguish from the regular Focus unless you look at the tag. Some electric cars look like electric cars, and others look like a regular car. The Honda Fit has an electric version available in Oregon. Then there's a couple of new, smaller vehicle subcompacts. The Smart for 2 Electric's the lowest priced electric vehicle available right now, and then the Chevy Spark is an all-electric version of the Spark that's available now in Oregon. That is a little pocket rocket. That thing, I've driven it, and it goes zoom, very quick, very high performance. Actually, I think out-accelerates the Volt. And there's some others coming down the pike. The Fiat has been, there's an electric version of the Fiat that's available in California. The Ford line has 3 different plug-in cars. The Focus is all electric, and they have a couple plug-in hybrids, including the Ford Fusion Energy. Mercedes is coming out with an electric drive vehicle. And Toyota has a RAV4 that's available now in California, and we're hoping to see that in Oregon soon. So lots of choices, lots of options, and you can go lots of different ways with electric transportation. Now I'm going to turn things over to Rick, and he'll tell you a little bit more about the charging levels and charging infrastructure.
Okay, thanks a lot, Stan. I want to give you a quick journey, or actually a quick introduction to my journey in electric vehicles. Back when I was in high school, I wrote a list of things I wanted to do in my life, and one of those things was to build an electric vehicle. I can't remember back then why I chose that, but I remember that was on my list of things to do. And although I've never done it, I have owned a number of vehicles. My first one was a 1985 Ford Escort. It was a converted vehicle. I bought it third hand, and actually an 85-year-old lady had it converted to be an electric car, and she had it for less than 6 months when she lost her eyesight, and somebody else bought it from her, so I'm the third owner of that one. It had 75,000 gas miles on it before it was converted, and when I sold it, it had over 150,000 miles on it, so half of those were electric and half of those were gas. So then I upgraded to a newer car, 1995 Geo Metro. This again was bought secondhand, and I had to do some repair work on this one, but I drove that for quite a while, and then I made a big leap into the 2000 model year, and this isn't mine, but it's one that PGE has had for a while. It's a 2001 Toyota RAV4. And notice I say 2001. Stan was talking about the new 2012 RAV4s. But this was a 2001 RAV4. It has about 30,000 miles on it, still going today. I drive that all over the place for work right now. And then on Earth Day this year, I broke down and bought my first new car in probably forever. It's been quite a while since I've bought a new car. I usually try to conserve and buy secondhand things. And so I bought a 2013 Nissan Leaf, and I have over 10,000 miles on it right now, so I drive that quite a bit. So that's my story. Let's go on to tell you a little bit about charging levels. So Stan talked about you and talked about the cars, and so now I'm going to talk about charging levels. And this is real basic here. Level 1 is basically a 120 volt standard outlet that you'll see in your garage, or probably wherever you're sitting. There's probably one nearby. And all the new vehicles will come with a special cord set, as shown in this picture here. They'll just plug into this outlet and then plug into the car and charge up. Usually those cords that are on there are 12 to 15 feet long or so. And it does need to be plugged into a dedicated outlet. So let's say you have a car, you get your first electric car, you park it in your garage, you plug it in there. You also happen to have a freezer in your garage, and you have your garage door opener in there. And the problem is you plug in your car, and you go and walk in the house and hit the garage door opener. Well, your freezer kicks on at the same time, and typically you have like maybe 1 or 2 circuits in your garage. So by the time you close the door into the house, your garage door stops about halfway down because all 3 of these things were on the same time, and it overloaded that circuit and tripped the breaker. So when you get up in the morning, you go out and you find out your car wasn't charged, the stuff in your freezer's melting, and you have raccoons in your garage getting into your freezer. So not a pretty sight. So make sure you use a dedicated outlet. The next level of charging is level 2, and this is using 208 volts. It's in a workplace, in some workplaces, or 240 volts, which would be your standard at home. And this, all new vehicles, we have a standard connector that all of them will plug in and charge up using a level 2 charger. And then there's DC quick charging. DC quick charging is a lot higher power. It typically uses 3-phase power provided to the charging station, and it'll charge the car. And so you have the examples of those are Nissan Leaf and the Mitsubishi i-MiEV have quick charger. And then the GM Spark that just came out, and Stan was also talking about the BMW i3. Those are planning on having the quick chargers on them in the fall. So the current ones out right now don't have quick charge capabilities. So this is a real basic charging level. This gets you to understand level 1 and level 2. It's AC power supplied to the car. And when we talk about charging stations, also I want you to understand that the charger for your car is actually inside the car. The charging stations are a real safe way of plugging your car in. There's no power on that connector until it's plugged into the car and it communicates with either the charging station or the connector. Like in the level 1, there's a little box that that cord is wrapped around there, and that communicates with the car. So there's no power on that connector when it's first plugged in. And then the difference between level 1 and level 2 and the quick charging is DC power, and the actual quick charge stations provide high voltage DC right into the battery pack, and that charge is controlled by the battery management system on the car itself. This next slide here has a lot more detail, and I'm not going to go through all of these. I do want to highlight a couple things. This is mainly a chart, since you'll be getting this presentation later on. This chart will be used kind of by the facility manager, electrician, or whatever who's planning for the infrastructure installation. But 2 things I do want to point out to you on this. The first one is that there are 2 different types of quick chargers. And the CHAdeMO, which is the first one here, all the charging stations installed in Oregon that are quick charge stations are all CHAdeMO ones. and those will charge the Nissan and the Mitsubishi vehicles that are equipped with a quick charger. The new ones that we're talking about, like GM and BMW and other manufacturers, that when they start coming out with the quick chargers, they're going to be using this one called the SAE combo connector. So I just want you to be aware of that there are two different types. The other thing on this that I wanted to remind you is the level of power for level 1 and level 2. This is AC voltage going to the car. Even for the quick charger, this is AC voltage that's going to the quick charger, but it's DC that goes to the car. And it's typically 480 volt or 280 volt three-phase power that needs to go to that charger. There is another one. Stan's first picture that he showed you was of a Tesla. Those vehicles have a capability of doing a supercharger, which will charge you up a lot faster. And so this kind of gives you an idea of the capabilities of the different charge levels. This also, we talk about the charging time, how long it takes to charge. And what I try to do is explain to people how many miles you get while you're plugged in. So level 1 is about 4 miles per hour per charge. Level 2, depending upon the charger that's on the car, it's 12 to 24 miles per hour of charge. I came up with this term myself, high power level 2s. The Teslas can take a lot more than some of the other ones when they're plugged into level 2. And so they can charge up, adding 30 to 60 miles per hour of charge. And then the DC quick charge adds about 4 miles every minute of charge. And then, of course, a supercharger, 30 minutes gives you about, I'll say I have 300 here. It should be 30 minutes gives you about 150 miles of range. So that gives you a quick idea on this here. So here's an example in the World Trade Center parking garage. We have 4 different vehicles here, and we have 3 different types of charging. We have level 1, that this converted Toyota Prius, converted to a plug-in Prius, has an extra battery that can be charged up as level 1. The Tesla and the Mitsubishi are charging up on level 2 stations. The Tesla happens to be a higher power one, so that's my 2 plus. If you go and ask anybody else what a level 2 plus is, they won't know, so that's my own term. It's just a higher power one. And then the quick charge, this is a Nissan Leaf. It's currently charging here at 390 volts, 81 amps as a DC quick charger. So Stan was talking about the 3 different things. It's about you, it's about the vehicles. Well, the most important thing is the EV charging, because without it, the cars aren't going to go anywhere. So I want you to go ahead and take your marker here, and everybody's been pretty good at that. I'd like you to go through, and if you've seen one, mark where you've seen it. If you've used one, if you have an electric vehicle or you've used one at work, mark that you've actually used one. If you've seen someone else plugging in and using one, then go ahead and mark that. And if you're an owner, and it looks like somebody is charged at work before or charges at home, or if you have a friend. So it looks like most people so far have seen one around. So in the wild, it would be kind of like on the street. Work, some people looks like they have seen workplace charging and even used them, and then have seen somebody in the neighborhood or a friend that has one. So if you look at some of those chargers, like Stan was saying, there's over 700 in Oregon, and there were a lot of people who started off putting these in because they wanted to raise their hand and kind of be an early adopter of this, and most people were promoting it because it was a green technology, and they wanted to kind of show their support for that. And then Stan talked about, well, no, it's not just that anymore. It's people are doing it because it's the cost of EV driving has come down quite a bit, and compared to using a gas car, your overall cost will be quite a bit lower. So they're starting to show up all over the place. So the thing that happened, though, from the EV chargers that most people have seen started in people's homes and workplaces and things like that. And Stan talked about the range of cars and stuff. And what we've taken things from, instead of the car just being used as kind of around the town, now they can be used to go from one location to another, from city to city, And right now you can drive all the way from Vancouver, BC, all the way down I-5, all the way to Southern Oregon using quick charge stations. Now, I haven't driven that whole route, but I've driven part of it. I've driven from Oregon City all the way up to Seattle. It does add a little bit of time stopping and charging up for 20 minutes here and there, but I don't drive to Seattle very often. And so, my wife said, if I had to do this all the time, I would not be, using an electric car to drive these routes on a regular basis. But the couple times a year we go up to Seattle, it adds a little bit to our trip, but it just adds some extra things for us to do while we're on the way. So a lot of times there's a lot of questions about EV charging. People want to know, well, what do I do with it? Who do I want to be able to use it? Is it at a workplace? Is it for retail? Who am I trying to attract? Where are they going to go? These are all types of questions that the public has kind of been asking, and other people, like, who's going to put these in? Are they going to be at public spots? Is it going to just be at home? Are they going to be in parking garages? And the answer is all those places. And actually right now they're in a lot of those places, as we can see from what people have checked off. And so we had to break things down a little bit because there's a lot of decisions people have to make about what they're going to do. And the first thing is what charging level is needed. And then is there going to be a fee or is it going to be free? What type of payment mechanism, if it's going to have a fee? How many spots do I need? Where am I going to get the funding for it? And what kind of incentives and tax credits are there that will be available? So we're going to take these one by one and go through these to make it real easy for you, and just look at these different steps. You can think about it as we go through what makes sense for you. The first thing here is the charging level. What type of charging level do I need? And that's going to determine a lot of things. So the first thing is how long are people going to be parking at the place that you're thinking about putting one? So if you're looking at residential or workplace, and people have parked there for a long time, the average driver drives about under 30 miles to work. And so if they have a car that gets, just about any of the ones that Stan showed and talked about, those can all go that distance to get somebody to and from work. And so actually at work, you could provide level 1 charging, which again, if you look at this kind of a hotel price scenario with, the higher the number of dollar signs, the more expensive the charging infrastructure is going to cost. That's going to be the cheapest one. Residential, putting one in your garage is going to be the least expensive. And then at the workplace, typically because you may not have the infrastructure available to put in a whole bunch of level 1 outlets in the parking garage or in a out on a street level, that's going to be a little bit more expensive, but the cost of the actual equipment isn't very expensive for a level 1 charging. The next one up, level 2, remember that allows you to charge a lot faster. And so the level 2 charge, you can have people there who are going to be parked less. So if this is you're doing shopping, you're visiting a business, and people want to get a little bit more charge, it's going to cost more to put that in, but level 2 charging will charge them up faster. Also at a workplace, you might want to think about level 2 charging, because somebody, if they have a car that goes 70 or so miles and they're driving 60 miles, that 15 miles isn't a lot for them to go and do something else on the way home maybe, and it would give them a little bit more confidence to make other trips and not be as worried about do they have enough charge to get home. So having some level 2s at a workplace might make sense. And then if you're on an interstate travel route where you're getting people to go from city to city, if you're a retail establishment or something like that, then quick charging might be the thing to do. If you're looking at the map we had that had kind of quick chargers all over the place, we're seeing at some locations like in Fred Meyer in Salem, they have a quick charger there, and there's a lot of people that travel from Portland to Salem, and then they really can't get back very easily without charging somewhere along the way. And if you're we've seen them lined up down at the Fred Meyer in Salem waiting to get charged up. So there's still a need for quick chargers, even though it looked like there were a lot. You can actually do it, then there may be the need for more because they do start piling up. So that's kind of selecting what type of charging you need is the first step here, and this can help you think about some of those levels and the reasons. So the next one is, are you going to charge a fee or is it going to be free? And there's a lot of different things to talk about each one of those. The first thing about having no fee is it encourages EV driving and all its benefits. So instead of reading through each one of these, I'm going to tell a little story about a large employer that we worked with, and they put in charging station, level 1 charging, and it was free, and they wanted to encourage EV driving and all its benefits. They don't have to worry about charging a fee, so it's more complicated when you're trying to figure out a payment mechanism. And they treated it similar to other things like coffee and other things that they provided and said, hey, this is just going to be free. We're going to let people use it. Well, they put in 2 charging stations that could charge 4 cars each, and they had cars lined up. And people had their extension cords out because there wasn't enough room. And I have a picture of 8 cars parked there at those charging stations charging up. And those were full every single day. And so all of a sudden, you had this no fee. People say, oh, that's free charging. I'm going to plug in and charge up there. Well, the first reason for having a fee is to reduce those who really don't need to charge up at work. Some people with a Chevy Volt, they don't have to charge up at work. It goes about 35 miles and then switches over to gas. And so if they're plugging in at work because it's free, I mean, they're doing something good for the environment. It's reducing those tailpipe emissions. But then again, you may want to think about that, especially if there's a lot of congestion at the stations. Either you need to put in lots more of them, or you need to be thinking about having a small fee that would encourage people to only use it if they really needed to use it. And as soon as they switched to level 1 stations to some level 2 stations and had a fee, and then the only people who were using those were people who really needed to charge up to make the trip back and forth. Some of the other reasons, though, for no fee, for example, in the public space, Kohl's at the Clackamas Promenade, they have a station. It's one of the Blink stations. I'll talk about some of the manufacturers in a little bit. And that's always free, so there's no payment mechanism required. They do have an access card that you need so you can access it, but it is free charging. And they have a sign right out there that says, this charging is sponsored here by Kohl's for free. An example of why they're doing that, Target did a study and showed that the cost for every minute somebody spends in the store, that they spend $1. And so if somebody's parked there for 20 minutes and they're in the store, they're expecting to get about $20 in revenue. Now that's the average price. Certainly people pay more and some people don't buy anything. But so there's a number of other reasons here to think about if you're going to charge a fee or no fee. But this will give you some thoughts about how you're going to do that. So the next step, if you are charging a fee, you need to think about a payment method. And there's a few different types of things that people have done. Some people just have a payroll deduction. Maybe you charge for parking right now, or you have parking passes for employees. You could change that a little bit and have some specific passes that show that they can park at an EV charging spot. And if you do have a fee associated with that, then you could charge that through a payroll deduction or have them pay a monthly pass fee. That's certainly less expensive in some cases than setting up a payment mechanism. And so there's a pay-per-use, which is the next one. Typically, the provider of the charging stations, and you can see some examples in this picture here, this has 6 different types of cards that are currently being used by manufacturers to control access. The first one has a little key fob, and this is used at a bunch of the quick charging stations that are in Oregon right now. And the other ones are different charging manufacturers and vendors have their own charge type cards that have an RFID in them or swipe through a card reader on the charging station. Typically, those stations have a monthly fee for communications because they need to communicate to a back-end network. And so you want to think about that there may be some cost for that. Other people have used a parking station. So if it's in a parking garage you're looking at and you already charge for parking, you can add a kind of an item on here that allow them to charge up at a parking spot and select a button if it's going to be for an electric vehicle, and they'd have to have that parking pass at that location. So there's a different things here about those different payment methods to think about. A new one that I don't have shown on here that was just announced last week or maybe a week before is being able to pay using your smartphone. So you go up to the charging station with an app on your phone, and it knows where you are, and it knows you're at this charging station, and it'll come up with a thing saying, do you want to charge here? And then you can either enter a code on your phone or scan the station, and it'll let you start charging there. So the next one is to figure out, well, how many spots do you need? In 2008, when we were first working with different retailers to put in charging stations, what happened was one of the retailers asked or said they were going to put in 6 chargers all in a row. Well, in 2008, if they'd put 6 chargers in a row, and it would kind of get some people upset because they have 6 right in front of the store that nobody else can park at, and it's kind of like just taking up the ideal parking spots there in the front. And so I asked them, well, how about if you just go ahead and put in 1 or 2 for right now and then add later on. So when you're assessing what you want to have, if it's a workplace, how many employees are asking about it, how far will they drive, are they willing to pay for it, do you expect them to be able to share spots and move around? If it's a retail thing, just like I was saying, put in a couple spots to show your support. Right now, if they start filling up fast, the idea is to think about putting in the conduit and stuff. If you're tearing up a parking lot, it's a lot less expensive to put in bigger and more conduit for use later on. So you want to think about that. For multifamily establishments, the first person who goes to install one, in some cases, may set the example for what you're going to allow to happen everywhere else. So you want to think about that. So if the first person you say, yeah, you can put it here and it's free, then that may be nice, but then everybody may want that. So the first rule about how many spots is kind of a corollary on if you build it, they will come. It's if you build it, more will come. And what are you going to do now? Whatever you do now is probably not going to be adequate in a few years. So you want to think about when you tear something up, put in the extra conduit. More and bigger is better, and also you can put in an extra conduit for communication. So in some cases, if you don't have most of the communications use cellular, but you could use some wired connection as well. It may not be used now, but if you had to add it later on, it'd be quite a bit more expensive. So think about that. The next one is funding. And so everybody wants to know, what is it going to cost to put a charging station in? And so for level 1 charging is, again, I mentioned before, is usually the cheapest for the equipment, and it's just the installation costs are going to vary. The biggest thing I want people to understand on these prices is all installation costs depend on where it's located. Location, location, location. It's real important because if you just decide you're going to put it in a parking lot and you want it close to the building, that may be the most expensive installation to run it from your building out to the parking lot. You may look around for other utility transformers, and that's where we come into play to help you out planning some of that. So if you just know you need it in a parking lot, maybe there's some less expensive ways of doing it. So these costs in here are estimates of what we've seen done. The quick charge stations, depending upon what you're buying, is the biggest type. And then the installation costs, again, are really going to vary by where it's located. The next thing here is incentives and tax credits, and I'm going to let Stan talk about that. So I'm going to pass that over to you, Stan.
Thanks, Rick. So there's a number of things you can do to reduce the cost on your installation and the purchase of the vehicles. When we promoted this webinar, we said learn the 2 biggest mistakes to avoid in installing EV charging. And the first one was not attending the webinar. So you've taken care of that, and you've listened and been attentive, and we appreciate that. And you've avoided that mistake. The second biggest mistake is to not take advantage of some of the tremendous incentives that are available. First of all, the auto manufacturers are doing some promotions. Here's one that's just come out from Nissan to help facilitate workplace charging. And we've got the contact information there. You can contact Jeannie Lamb to find out the details. But basically, they're doing custom offers where you tell them how many employees, how many spots you want to do EV charging, and they'll work with you to both subsidize the acquisition of the equipment and the installation. And then there's a new program run by David Peterson called Nissan EV Advantage, where they're basically paying a bounty. If you install a CHAdeMO compatible quick charger, they will pay you $10,000 to get that in the ground, as long as it's publicly accessible, and they're even doing a $5,000 bonus if you get it done by the end of the year. So if you're interested in doing something like that, call Dave Peterson. There's vendor or charging station manufacturer promotions available as well. Fuji Electric has a financing option available for the DC quick charging stations, and there's contact information for that. ChargePoint, we just found out a couple days ago, is doing a trade-in offer. If you have this certain kind of station, they will give you credit toward replacing it with a station that has more charge ports than a single. And there's contact information on that. Lots of other promotions out and about, and we're happy to help connect you with those to reduce the cost of your project. There's also federal and state tax credits. On the cars, there is a tax credit up to $7,500 depending on how big the battery is. And then there's also tax credits for charging system installations. On federal, there's a 30% credit up to $30,000. So you can get a lot done using that federal tax credit. And on the personal end, like in my garage, I got a tax credit for the installation of a charger in my garage. And there's the form number. One thing, it's probably the best kept secret on this federal tax credit, if the purchaser is a school district, government, or nonprofit, the organization that is selling the charging equipment can take the credit. That's a little bit of a complicated process, but it is available, and a lot of people don't know that. So we have a contact here in just a second that can help you with that. On the Oregon side, there's an Oregon State credit. On the business side, there's an application process. The window's actually open right now to apply for that. You need a pre-approved project before you can get the credit. So be aware of that, and there's the contact info to find out about that. And on the personal side, again, in my garage, I got a 25% tax credit installing a charging station at home. And that does not need to be pre-approved, and there's information on that. So lots of ways to get this stuff paid for. Here's a contact at State of Oregon who's an expert on the different tax incentives, and he's offered to our customers, give him a call or email Rick Wallace, and he can help you understand some of these tax credits that are out there. I'm going to turn it back over to Rick, who has more information.
Okay, thanks a lot, Stan. So this information here, I'm not going to go through all of this. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that there are lots of different options for them for charging equipment. There's probably 2 or 3 times this number of actual vendors that are making charging equipment. I listed these here because these are ones who have charging equipment now in Oregon, and these are their contact names and phone numbers and email addresses. So if you have questions about any of these, as Stan said, a lot of them are having promotions. I would make sure that you contact all of these and say, and find out, look at the services they provide, level 1, level 2, or quick chargers. Make sure they provide the equipment that you're interested in. And I would get quotes from every single one of these and ask them what they're doing so you can make sure that you're making the best selection and getting the best options that they have for what their current promotions and offers are. So we hope to see you down the road on Electric Highway. We hope to help you. We hope to help you get your charging equipment installed if that's what you decide to do. And charging equipment installation can be as difficult as it is to understand this sign that's in the city of Portland. But at PGE, we want to make sure that we make it easy for you. So this is one step in doing that, is this webinar that we presented today. And just like this sign makes it a lot easier, please ask questions and contact us so we can make sure that your installation goes smoothly. Our contact information is here. I'm going to pass it back to Beth. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Rick and Stan. We'd like to remind you of some upcoming webinars and seminars that are available. If you visit our website, EnergyEducationCenter.com, you can see a full list. Next couple weeks, We have compressed air systems in Wilsonville and electrical safety awareness in Hillsborough. And then you can see the complete list there. Before we proceed to the question and answer portion of the webinar, I'd like to remind you that you can continue to submit questions to me through chat, and I will ask them of the presenters. And within a few days, we will send you a follow-up email with a recording of this session and the PDF of the slides, including those slides that Rick and Stan mentioned were maybe more easy to see in a larger format. I'd like to draw everyone's attention right now to the polling survey, which I've just opened in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. If you could take a few moments to complete that, we would appreciate it. We really value your feedback and do use it to improve future webinars. And now I'd like to proceed to the question and answer portion. Our first question we have is, I'm wondering what the lifespan of a Leaf or I think batteries with an average annual driving of 15,000 a year. The range declines with time, is that correct? And I'm going to pass this question to Stan here. Stan?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a frequent question we receive. These cars have so little maintenance that a lot of people tend to look for, well, what does go wrong or what does need to be repaired or replaced? And people tend to gravitate toward the battery because it is a little bit of an unknown for most people. The battery is designed to last as long as the car. We've talked to the Nissan engineers, and they basically said that they've been surprised by the number of questions about the batteries because they made them to withstand regular charging and quick charging and to perform over the useful life of the vehicle. There is an expectation that over time, just like a battery for any device, a cell phone, a laptop, whatever, that with thousands of cycles of charge that you will see a reduction in performance. And most of the manufacturers have a warranty that covers the whole car, bumper to bumper, and then also a specific battery warranty as well. We've seen things like, I think it's 5 years, 80,000 miles, that type of thing. It varies from manufacturer to manufacturer. Nissan also has a battery performance warranty with very specific levels of battery performance over specific levels of time. So that's to provide reassurance to the customers. We really haven't seen a lot of troubles with the batteries here. It's a pretty mild climate. There have been a few cases in very hot environments like Phoenix, Arizona, where there were some issues with heat, and manufacturers have responded with new battery chemistries to address that. Rick, you got something to add?
Yeah, one other quick thing I wanted to one other quick thing I wanted to let people know is that there are the battery is expected to decrease, but even when the battery is towards the end of its life in the car, they're really talking about that is still maybe instead of being able to go 80 miles on a charge, it can only go 70. So that still may be well within what your needs are. The warranty typically covers a certain range like that, so that shouldn't be an issue, but you can talk to most of the manufacturers can give you more details on that.
Thanks, Rick and Stan. The next question we have from a participant is, didn't Ecotality go bankrupt?
Yeah, I'll take that question there. That is true. Ecotality did go bankrupt, and if you look on the list, I do not have contact information for them right now. They do have the most numbers of chargers here in Oregon than any of the other manufacturers. But the completion of the bankruptcy sale just happened, and a company called Car Charging Group has purchased Ecotality, and we're looking for them to, that transaction was completed at the beginning of the week, and they're in the process of working through that. The Blink network is still up and running, and all those chargers are still available to be used, and they'll be, we'll add a contact on there once we have a contact for the new company that's taking over those stations.
Thank you, Rick. That's great. Our next question is, I believe also for you, Rick, how much do the various levels of charging stations cost? How much does each type cost to install?
Okay, so when you get your slide deck, you can look back at it, but generally as I said, the level 1 stations, you can have an electrician install an outlet in a parking garage fairly inexpensively. That's the least cost. The other ones we have, that slide has a variety of ranges. A level 2 station with no payment mechanism in it typically can be purchased for under $1,000. If it's going to be in a location that's going to get a lot of use, you may want to make sure you buy something that's a little sturdier station. If you have payment mechanisms, in them where that you can control access to the unit for charging, then those can cost $2,000 and $3,000 or more, depending upon their durability and the options that come with them. So that's why I recommend everybody should go through and get those quotes from the different manufacturers, because those are changing all the time.
Thank you, Rick. And I want to thank all of you for joining us today. That was our last question. And we'll stay online for just a little bit in case any of you would like to chat with us further. But we hope to see you at a future webinar, and let us know if you have any questions. Thank you.